All right, and welcome in, everybody. Hope we all are having a fantastic, fantabulous, awesome, freaking day. My name is Garrett Shoemake, and this is the Shoemake Take. Today, we continue with the NFC East, talking about the biggest surprise from last year, the miracle run that it was for the Washington Commanders. Wow, this team was fantastic, and now they have a very interesting 2024 season ahead of them, and I am here to tell you, sorry Commanders fans, that the Commanders are going to be taking a slight step backwards, but they're still going to be really good. So no, we're not going to have any hot takes here at all. The Commanders are still a very good football team, and they're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be good. No concerns there. But for those of you that want to go ahead and jump right into the discussion, you can go right ahead and knock yourself out. I won't be mad at you. Maybe a little bit, actually. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're good. Knock yourself out. But it's going to be in the timestamp. The timestamp is going to be in the video description, so that's where you're going to find it. But for those of you that do not know how this 2025 season preview series works, I know that we're approaching 3/4 of the way there, more than 3/4 of the way there by this point, but we still got to explain it for anybody here that's new on the show. But here's what we break down. First, we're going to recap 2024. What was each team's record? What did their season look like? Then we'll get into the offseason, talk about every notable offseason news, like the biggest ones, whether it's new coaches, trades, notable extensions, or extensions, I should say. And then we'll get into free agency. We'll go each player, look at everything that they've added, that they lost. Then we'll go into the draft, break it down pick by pick about what I like, what I don't like. And then after that, we will break down the schedule and we'll go game by game and look at the stretches, look at the most tough games, the easiest games, and look where everything shapes out for each team there. And after that, we will cap off with I will be giving you guys my official record prediction, and then we'll look at some storylines to cap off the show completely. So let's talk about the Washington Commanders, because they got a long road ahead of them to asserting them being a true Super Bowl contender, I think, because they're still building. They have a little ways to go. They still have holes on their roster they need to work with. But that being said, they're still going to be good. In 2024, they went 12-5 out of nowhere. Week 1 was a loss to Tampa where it looked like that, yeah, this is going to need to be a team that has a little ways to go. I had them going 5-12 going into 2024, and they did not disappoint. The year was absolutely magical for them. I don't even think the Commanders themselves expected to go as far as they did, all the way to the NFC Championship, with Jaden Daniels having the greatest rookie season of all time from any quarterback ever. It was incredible. It was simply incredible. And a lot of the things that I thought would go wrong for the Commanders actually went right. I was concerned about the veteran weapons. They ended up playing a big role, especially a guy like Zach Ertz, who was arguably Jaden Daniels' most reliable target, not named Terry McLaurin. Well, he was, but on third down, where was Jaden Daniels going? He was going to Zach Ertz. We needed a big play, short yardage. Where's he going? Zach Ertz. All the time, those two converted and kept this offense on schedule and continuing to move the ball down the field. And then Terry McLaurin, of course, was fantastic. He always is. Scary Terry is one of my favorite players in the NFL. Very underrated by a lot of people. But other than that, I was also worried about Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn was looking like the right head coach last year. I was worried that getting a defensive-minded head coach and then bringing in Cliff Kingsbury, of all people, to be the offensive coordinator, I was concerned about it. Well, they squashed every single bit of those concerns with the year that they had. So another thing that went right for the Washington Commanders was their coaching hires. I'll add this. I thought that, because remember last year, Ben Johnson was going to be the head coach of the Washington Commanders, but last minute he backed out, and so they went to Dan Quinn, and I thought like they just settled for Dan Quinn. And I was like, you don't want to do that. You don't want to settle on a head coach. And, well, guess what? It looks like that Dan Quinn's the right head coach for this team, given how quick their turnaround was. So let's break down what they did in this offseason. And this offseason, they went out and made 2 big trades to bolster this offense, starting with the offensive line, trading for Texans left tackle Laremy, Tunsil, and wow. They went out and said, we need to make this offensive line better for Jaden Daniels. It was average, and here, you get one of the best left tackles in the NFL. For Houston, I don't know why they traded him away. He was their only good offensive lineman. I thought that decision was objectively really, really stupid. But for the Commanders to profit off of that, congratulations to them. Now they got a future tackle to protect his blind side for years to come for the long-term future. Laremy Tunsil is one of the best in the business. Can't go wrong there. And then they traded for wide receiver Deebo Samuel. This one I'm not as high on. Deebo Samuel has been quite mediocre these past couple years in San Francisco. His name still gets touted as a good receiver, and he's still a good receiver. But like I said, he is mediocre. His production matches that. His stats match that. You look at his tape, it matches that. He is not as explosive. He's not as consistent. And here's the hoping that Cliff Kingsbury can get him in the right situation more often, because he's going to need to be. He's going to have to be one of the main targets in Washington, and their depth at wide receiver is not great. So he needs to play well if the Commanders are to be good this year. If he flops, then the Commanders are going to have a lot more struggles throwing the football with him not playing up to par. So it's interesting. I like that they're trying to get another receiver that has a lot of production, that has a successful career to this point overall, to give another weapon to Jaden Daniels. I mean, they're trying to build around him, which I respect that a lot. That's what you're supposed to do. I like it, and I like the players that they brought in here mostly. But with Deebo Samuel, this has a chance to flop big time. I'm not going to root for that. I don't think that's going to happen necessarily, but I don't think that Deebo Samuel is going to be like a big time boost to this offense that they so desperately need. No, not at all by any means. But bringing in these two guys, overall, fantastic. You want to build around Jaden. That's enough said about that. But the other big news is Terry McLaurin's hold in. He was holding out, but now he is holding in. He is in the building. He's in the meeting rooms. He's, doing all that stuff, but he's not on the practice field because he wants a new contract. And I am still on Team Terry. I'm always going to be for the players trying to get a new contract for themselves. But this situation is really particular, where I can understand why the Commanders really have not budged. Terry McLaurin just turned 30 years old. And you look at recent contracts that 30-year-old receivers have signed, most notably Amari Cooper. That's the first one that comes to mind. I can't remember the other ones, but there's been numerous ones over the past few years or so. And almost all of them have flopped, and not have just flopped, they've been horrible decisions looking back in retrospect. So I can understand the Commanders being hesitant, because you don't want to do that same thing and potentially screw over your cap situation and potentially screw up the development of Jaden Daniels. But you know also is going to screw up the development of Jaden Daniels? Getting rid of his number one target. I don't care that Terry McLaurin's turning 30. I don't care that I know that there's history with that being a bad decision. Terry McLaurin is his best target. That is Jaden Daniels' best receiver, best target, and you cannot, for the love of God, get rid of that. If you want Jaden Daniels to develop, you want his best teammates and players to be around him. The idea is to build around Jaden Daniels, not take things away from him. So I get it, it's a risk, but for the sake of Jaden Daniels' development and his progression, you best give him a new contract. You better. And if you don't, that would be stupid, because at least with Terry McLaurin being on the field, I have more confidence that he's actually going to do something for Jaden Daniels. Even if Terry McLaurin slows down in production, he's still going to be a really reliable target for him. That's not going to change. Terry McLaurin's production is not going to drop off a cliff. I can guarantee you that. So pay the man, give him the extension that he wants. I know it's a lot of money, but you have a quarterback on a rookie contract. Who else are you going to pay right now? You took on Larry Tunsil's contract. Fine. You traded or got rid of Jonathan Allen. He was a big highest paid, or one of the highest paid defensive tackles. You got rid of him. That freed up some money. So, I mean, who else? Marshawn Lattimore, I guess. But other than that, I mean, off the top of my head, who else are they really paying a bunch of money to on a big contract? Give it to Terry McLaurin. Pay him his money. Please, it's Jaden Daniels' best target. You don't want to mess around with stuff like that. So that's kind of my take on Terry McLaurin's hold-in situation. I understand why the Commanders are hesitant, but they need to pay him because that is better for their young quarterback. So other than that, let's continue with our offseason, talking about the free agents that they brought in on their roster. And I want to say that they did an okay job. On the defensive side, the offensive side, they really didn't do a whole lot. They brought in Josh Johnson to be another backup quarterback in the room, which He's a veteran, going to be a good teacher for Jaden along with Marcus Mariota. Can't complain about that at all. I'm a big fan of Josh Johnson, so I respect it a lot. They brought in some offensive linemen to bring in depth. They brought in a new kicker, Matt Gay, so that'll be interesting and something to follow as the season goes along for them. But on the defensive side, this is where they spent a lot of money. They brought in a lot of players to help plug in holes because they lost a lot of players on the defensive side in free agency, which we'll talk about in a second. But they brought in guys like Javon Kinlaw, Eddie Goldman, Deatrich Wise. These are all average starters, low-level starters, but they will plug and fill in holes and just give you okay production until you continue to draft players and, rebuild that defensive line. For now, it's going to be an average unit. To me, you got average starters across the board mostly. That is what's going to be for me, which we'll talk about here in a little while when we talk about strengths and weaknesses. But they also very recently brought in edge rusher, linebacker Von Miller. This one does not excite me as much as I thought it would because Von Miller, his production really has dipped. And I don't mean just dipped. It has really not been great over the past couple of years, coming off of a bad injury the year before last. And then coming in last year, he just was not very productive for the Bills. And so I am sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm not excited about this move. He's going to be a good veteran presence. He's going to be really good in the locker room and bring, a championship caliber mentality to this defense, which the stuff that he brings off the field that can't be quantified is very important. So I will acknowledge that. But what you're going to get from Von Miller on the field is not going to be a whole lot. But maybe he turns back the clock. I would root for that. I'm a big Von Miller fan. So here's to hoping that happens, but I'm not going to have my hopes up. And then they also brought in corner Jonathan Jones from New England. This one I like. He's projected to probably be the fourth corner on that depth chart, but he's a guy who's played a ton of games, who has a lot of experience. And for your fourth corner, that's great because Jonathan Jones is a starting level corner in the NFL. And so you get a guy like that as your fourth corner, that helps really build depth at that spot. And then they brought in Will Harris to be take up one of the safety spots. He's also a starter that bounced around the league a little bit. He came from the Saints last year he was with the Saints. That's how I should have put it. So he's going to fill in, taking the spot for Jeremy Chin, who they lost, who we'll talk about more in just 1 second. So now let's talk about their losses. Let's talk about who they ended up losing in free agency. Because on the offensive side, they only lost 3 players of true significance, but they're pretty significant because Olamide Zaccheaus and De'Ami Brown, they lost valuable wide receivers. De'Ami Brown was very solid in the regular season, but when the playoffs rolled around, De'Ami Brown was good. He was really good against Tampa. He had over 100 yards. He went over 100 yards against Detroit and went pretty insane in that game, if you guys remember. So losing him, that stinks. He goes to Jacksonville, which he's going to be solid over there, I think. And then Zaccheaus, he's a solid fourth receiver. He's a lower level starting receiver in the NFL, but he's going to be great depth no matter wherever he goes. And so losing him really hurts because now you want Luke McCaffrey to take a step forward, and that's fine. You want that to happen. You're always trying to get younger and cheaper at any position you can. That's how the NFL works. It's a business. But losing Zaccheaus, I would have liked them to see at least bring one of those guys back just so the wide receiver room is just strong top to bottom, and you don't have an issue like right now that the Commanders have where they don't have a lot of wide receiver depth. And then on the defensive side, the biggest one was losing defensive tackle Jonathan Allen. They had a contract dispute, couldn't figure it out, ended up releasing him, and he immediately got swiped by the Minnesota Vikings, which that's a great pickup for them. And that stinks because he was their best interior defensive lineman. They gave him a big contract a couple years ago. So for that, that's really unfortunate. And so now you want, Daron Payne to step up into that number 1 role, which I think he can do. Daron Payne's a good player in his own right. But Johnny Newton, Jerzon Newton, the second-round pick that they took high last year, he needs to step up big time. He really needs to step up big time. And if he doesn't, then this defensive line, which already isn't great, is going to suffer and have some issues. So it's a big question mark, but he does have the upside. I like Jerzon Newton. I liked him coming out of Illinois. So there's a lot to like. We'll have to see. But they also lost Dante Fowler. He had 10 sacks last year. He was sneaky good for the Commanders last year. Was it great? No, but he was a solid pass rusher. He goes to Dallas to help, do whatever they need to do over there without Micah Parsons. It's not going to be very good over in Dallas. I have them going 6-11 and finishing 4th in the NFC East. So there's that. But Dante Fowler was good for them last year, so to lose him, that stinks. He was also a veteran presence, which also stinks. But I get it. You want to try and get younger and cheaper, but Dante Fowler is a guy I would have brought back. I think he would have been worth it. And they also lost a couple guys in the secondary, like Jeremy Chin and Derek Forrest. Jeremy Chin was kind of bounced around the league a little bit as of late. I think he ended up going to the Raiders. I'm pretty sure, yeah, he went to the Raiders. But losing Jeremy Chin, I mean, he's a good starter, but now you have Will Harris, who's probably not as good, but it's not that much of a change where it's, a significant drop-off. But it still stinks when you lose a quality starter like Jeremy Chin. It always hurts because roster turns, sometimes you just can't find that right guy to replace, and maybe Will Harris can. But, I mean, I get what they're trying to do. I personally would have tried to give Jeremy Chin back. I'm sure they did, but losing him still stinks regardless. But after that, we got to look at their draft class. Their draft class wasn't very big. They only drafted 5 players, and so far, I mean, you can't do a whole lot with 5 picks, of course, but the players they got were pretty okay. I can't say that I'm disappointed, but at the same time, I wish I would have seen more, but I don't know. It's hard to complain, but I would have wanted to see more. But let's break it down. First round pick, Josh Connerly Jr., the tackle out of Oregon. He was the most athletic tackle out of these top guys in this offensive line class. He is probably going to go to right tackle for Washington after they traded for Laremy Tunsil. But like I mentioned, he is quick, he is athletic, he gets to his spot, and considering he has a little bit shorter arms, he has big, strong hands, has good anchor, and he has a really good chance to compete with Andrew Wiley for the starting right tackle spot. I think Andrew Wiley should have that job and let Josh Connerly just develop. You don't need to start Connerly right away, so I don't want them to have pressure to play him. Unless Andrew Wiley straight up sucks, then okay, yeah, then you need to start the rookie. But I don't want to start Josh Connerly right away. He needs a little bit of time to develop his technique and refine it. But I think he could be a really good tackle in the NFL. He's got a lot of physical tools. He's very athletic. There's a lot to like with Josh Connerly. So investing into the offensive line and helping build around Jaden Daniels, the offensive line was average last year for the Commanders and had some issues at points. So trying to invest in guys that are talented, especially high with the first round, second round, stuff like that, that's important. And so seeing the Commanders invest into that, very important, very responsible of them to do that. And then in the second round, they drafted Ole Miss corner Trey Amos. This guy was thought to go late in the first round in some mocks, but most of them have been going in the second. But Trey Amos is a guy I like. He's like 6 foot, 190 pounds. He's got good length. He's also very physical. Very physical. One of the more physical press corners in this draft class at the top. And he's got great speed. He can break up passes. He's a 50-50 demon. He goes up and goes and tries to get the football. He is a really good corner, and they need a good press outside corner because Marshawn Lattimore is coming off of an injury, and he did next to nothing for the Commanders last year. And when he was on the field, he was more of a liability. So having a young guy like Trey Amos who has that similar skill set is important. They needed that, and so to address that need is really, really good. And also, it'll allow second-year corner Mikey Sainristil to move into the slot where he's probably better suited. So you get 2 upgrades right there. You have a good cornerback too in Trey Amos, and Mikey Sainristil is in his more natural position. So there's a lot to like here with that pick. And then in the 4th round, they selected Jalen Lane out of Virginia Tech, I think is where he came out of. Great speed, great deep ball, deep threat guy. He needs to refine his route running, but he showed some flashes of having really good route running. So you want that to develop a little bit. I don't know how many snaps he's going to take here overall as a rookie, but I think he's going to play special teams a lot. He's probably going to get some snaps there with like Luke McCaffrey and some of the other twos when they swap in. But Jeremy Lane has potential. I like the potential, but there's some other receivers in here that I thought could have been a better prospect. And then after that, they drafted Kane Madrano in the 6th round. He is a rangy linebacker, can run sideline to sideline, gets downhill. He's going to play on teams to start his career. He's going to be a really good special teams player, more than likely, but he has upside to develop into a better linebacker in the future. They need that because Bobby Wagner is up there in age, and he's going to quit at any point, anytime, realistically speaking. So you want a guy to develop that could take his spot later on, and I think that's what Kane Madrano can do potentially for the Commanders. I like the pick. It's a good athleticism. He's a good athlete. He's going to play on teams and probably be pretty good there as a rookie. And then they drafted Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt in the 7th round, and he was interesting because he played one game last year and then couldn't play anymore because the NCAA ruled him ineligible. But looking back at what he did in 2023, he was really good. He was fast, patient runner, and did not catch the ball out of the backfield very much. Didn't catch more than 13 passes in a season, but he made the most of those opportunities. On tape, you see that he is deadly on wheel routes, deadly in the backfield on swing passes. When you get it to him in space, he can make guys miss. He's a good playmaker. So to get him in the 7th, if he had played this year, all 2024, probably would have been an earlier day 3 pick, maybe late day 2 if things really popped off, because he was pretty good in 2023. So I thought the value was pretty good, and they need a good young running back to develop. I would have liked maybe going a little bit earlier, but someone like Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, like I said, is good value, so I can't complain too much. So the draft, like I said, not very many players, only 5 picks. Wish I could have seen a little bit better, but overall, I mean, their draft is nothing to really complain about. They have guys that need some time to develop, have good upside. That's all you're really looking for a draft class. And for the Commanders, I mean, they're still veteran heavy. They still have a lot of veterans on their roster, so these guys are not going to be rushed to have to play early. They're going to have time to just soak in the NFL, adjust, and that's really good. That's really important, so that I can really respect. But overall, are the Commanders an improved football team? That's an interesting one because I want to say no. Part of me wants to say yes because they traded for Deebo, got Laremy, Tunsil, of course. I think their offense, in terms of starters, is better on paper. Their defense is not as better, so it's or not as good as last year. So it's hard to really say like if they're improved or not. I would say they're maybe not, but they're in a similar spot compared to what they were last year on paper. Now let's look at their schedule, because their schedule is pretty balanced. Things work out in their favor in that sense because they don't have a lot of tough stretches where things are really difficult. Things are not really easy either, but you want a balanced schedule. You want things to just really be even out for the Commanders, and it starts week 1 at home against the New York Giants. That is a victory for me. I don't think the Giants are going to be very good this year, and so give me the Commanders to win week 1. And then week 2 against the Atlanta Falcons. This is one of the most important games of the year. Remember last year, these two teams faced off in prime time, and it was a classic. Him and Michael Penix were going at it back and forth, throw for throw. The game went into overtime, and the Commanders ended up pulling it off at the end. But this game is going to be fun. It's going to be competitive. It's going to be fun. And ultimately, I think the Commanders win this game. I think they're the better football team. But this will be a really fun game nonetheless. And then you're on the road against the Dallas Cowboys. This is going to be interesting because the Cowboys managed to split with the Commanders last year. Does that happen again? That is a possibility. But right now, early on in the year, I think the Commanders are a better football team. There's a better chance of them winning compared to later on in the year when they face in week, what is it? What is that on? They play on Christmas, so that's week 17. Yeah, week 17. And so, wait, I just realized something. I was reading this backwards. I am so sorry. I was reading it top to bottom instead of left to right. No, so the Falcons are in week 4 and the Cowboys are in week 7. So let's back up for a second. So I mentioned the Giants winning. They're winning week 1. Week 2, they go on the road to face the Green Bay Packers on primetime. This one's going to be a tough one. This is going to be really tough. I think the Packers overall are a better football team. I think the Packers probably win this one, but it's going to be a tough game nonetheless. The Commanders could easily win, or not easily, but the Commanders could very much win this as well. That's a toss-up for me. And then you're at home to face the Raiders in week 3. That's a win to me. The Raiders are going to need some time. They have a new head coach in Pete Carroll. They did a lot to their roster to make them more competitive this year, but I think they're going to need some time. They're going to need some time to get everything together, and with the continuity that the Commanders have, I'm going to rely on that, and I think they use that to beat Las Vegas. Then we get to the Falcons in week 4. I think the Commanders win that game. I've already made that clear, so I think you're looking at a potential 3-1 start, maybe even 4-0. If things all break your way, that'd be great. And then week 5, you're on the road against the LA Chargers. This one is a tough one because the Chargers defense is very stingy. Are they going to be as good as they were last year? Probably not, but they're still going to be a good unit, and it's going to be a good test for this Commanders offense. And then on the flip side of it, this defense has got to go up against Justin Herbert and rookie Omari Hampton and Najee Harris, also including there Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and who they draft? Trey Harris, the rookie out of Ole Miss, Trey Amis's teammate. So there is that connection. That's going to be a fun game. It'll be interesting. I think Chargers maybe pull that one off because of their defense. I think they're a more well-rounded team than Washington because of their defense. But, like, again, with the Packers, the Commanders could win this one as well, but I think they end up losing that. And then they're at home on primetime against the Chicago Bears, the rematch from last year that went down to a Hail Mary. And what a ending, what a game this was for these two teams. This is the next most important game on the Commanders' schedule, and this is one they have to win because they cannot have it go down to a Hail Mary. The Chicago Bears are going to be a better football team this year than they were last year. They're going to be coming. They're going to try and get their revenge after what was such a heartbreaking loss on their end, because the guy that was supposed to be covering Noah Brown, who caught the touchdown, Tyreek Stevenson, the play as it happened was taunting to fans in the stands. So had he decided to lock in and not be a bonehead, then the Bears probably would have ended up winning the game. So it's going to be close. The Bears are going to be better, so the Commanders cannot afford to get a slow start in this one. They're going to need to start quick, start fast, because this Bears offense is also loaded. And then you get into Week 7 against the Cowboys. I've already said that's a win. Not much more to say there. Then you're at primetime on the road against the Chiefs. Ooh, boy, this is a tough one. I think the Commanders can win it. But if it's one thing that we've grown to learn about Kansas City is that they don't lose at home. They don't lose at home in prime time. That just doesn't happen. So give me the Chiefs to win this game. I just don't think that there's a lot of factors going in the Commanders' way in this one. And then they are at home to face the Seattle Seahawks on another primetime game. So two primetime games back-to-back for Seattle, or for Washington, excuse me. And this is another tough one. I think the Seattle Seahawks defense is going to be really good this year. I think they're going to take a step forward. But this will be a good test for the Commanders' defense because the Seahawks offense is going to need some time to gel and get going. So Commanders probably win this game early on. If it was later in the year, probably see the Seahawks could pull this one off. But given that it's, halfway through, I think I'm going to lean on the Commanders to win this one. Then Week 10. The rematch of the Motor City Meltdown in the divisional round. You are at home this time to face the Detroit Lions. I think the Commanders win this game. I think the Lions are going to take a step backwards this year. Not as big as a bunch of people are thinking. They're still going to be good. They're still going to make the playoffs. I still have them winning the division and winning 11 games. But for the Commanders, they kind of had their number. And the Lions are a little bit worse. The Commanders are a little bit worse, sure. But I think with being on home turf, I think they pull off that win against Detroit. And then on primetime, you're going up against the Miami Dolphins. This one's going to be a tough one, but I think the Commanders are better. I think they win that game. Then you got a Week 12 bye week. So a little bit later into the year, got 6 games left to go. Not too bad. Excuse me. Just taking a second to take a sip of my water. And then you're coming off the bye, though. Prime time against the Denver Broncos. This one's a really tough one because the Broncos defense is one of the best in the league. You have one of the best corners in the NFL, if not the best, in Patrick Surtain. They have a strong defensive line, strong linebackers. They also brought in Dre Greenlaw, so that's going to make them even better. And then you have a young quarterback in Bo Nix, who I think is going to take a step forward in year 2, and he's probably going to give this defense some problems. I think Denver's the better football team. I think they win this one. So coming off the bye, your loss at home on primetime against a really good football team, that's just a tough break. Then Week 12 or Week 14. I said 12 because it's playing on December 7th. But Week 14 on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. This will be another big test for this defense because if J.J. McCarthy has time, if he has time to work through his progressions and do what he does, then the Commanders are going to be in a tough spot. But if they can get pressure on J.J. McCarthy, make him uncomfortable, maybe force a couple mistakes, I think the Commanders will have a much better chance at winning this game. I don't know about this defensive line for Washington. It doesn't match up well against the Vikings offensive line, which looks to be really, really good this year. I think the Vikings are going to somehow pull off this win and continue. Well, we'll continue what? I don't know what I'm saying there. But disregard that. I apologize. But I have the Vikings winning this game because of the lack of pass rush I think this defensive line is going to get, which makes J.J. McCarthy more comfortable. Then, on the road against the New York Giants. I've already made that clear. I think the Commanders sweep the Giants in 2025. That's another win on the column. Then, Philly. The first Philly game at home. That is a win. I think they split with the Eagles this year like they did last year. Of course, it came down to the wire with a game-winning touchdown, but I think the Commanders are the only team that will really compete with Philly for anything in the NFC East, even though I don't have them winning it. At the same time, I think they still do split. I like how that bodes for Washington. And then, here's where things get a little interesting because you're at home against the Cowboys. Last year, the Cowboys won in Washington in what was a crazy roller coaster of a game. One of the best games of the year last year. Probably the best to some people. So, can the Commanders get their revenge on the Dallas Cowboys and not let the same thing happen to them like it did last year? I say they win. I think the Commanders are good. Of course, it's more of the Dallas Cowboys being worse than what they were last year. So, give me the Commanders to get their revenge and sweep the Dallas Cowboys. But like I said a minute ago, I have them losing to the Eagles week 18. I have them splitting. So, if they got to win the first one, they're going to lose the next one. And so, like I said, the schedule has some tough matchups, but it is very balanced. I mean, you break it down. I mean, you have Giants, win. Packers, probably loss. Raiders, win. Falcons, win. Chargers, loss. Right? Boom, boom, boom. Yes. Then Chicago Bears, win. Cowboys, win. Chiefs, loss. Seahawks, win. Lions, win. Miami, that's a win. Denver, that's a loss. Vikings, that's a loss. Giants, that's a win. Eagles, that's a win. Cowboys, that is a win. That's a little bit of an issue, but for me, and then Eagles, that is a loss. That came out to 11 wins. Honestly, you know what? I'm going to spoil it right here. I have them going at 10-7, but I just counted 11 wins breaking down the schedule. I just realized I did that, so I'm going to acknowledge it right now. They could very much go 11-6 or 10-7. I'm like, the Commanders could go anywhere between 9-8 to 13-4. Like, any of those realms of possibilities are in play for the Commanders. I think they're going to win with 10+ wins, but I'm not saying that they're going to go 10-7 and have it be that way. They could very much win 11 games. I'm usually within one to 2 games when I pick teams' records, so one win would fall in that ballpark, and it would not surprise me at all. But I just noticed that, and I just wanted to make that clear before someone came to me in the comments and was like, oh, you had 11 wins when you broke down the schedule, but you said they go 10-7. No, I just wanted to make that clear right here, right now. So sorry for the spoiler, but I think the clarity is more important. So after breaking down their schedule, how do I feel about the Washington Commanders? I think I've pretty made that clear. They are still good, but with the losses that they've had on offense and defense, I have them taking a slight step backwards, along with me thinking that they really overachieved last year. So I think they're going to level out a little bit. They're going to be in the playoffs. They're still going to be good, but it's probably not going to be a deep playoff run like last year. That's going to be really hard to replicate. And with the issues that the roster still has for the Washington Commanders, I think it's going to need another year before I can really say that they're going to be a true bona fide Super Bowl contender. Because this second year, things are a lot different, especially because you're being the hunted instead of being the hunter. But let's look at their strengths. Their strengths, as I take a sip of water, have a time to take a look at it. There you go. It's on here on the screen. Quarterback is one of the top strengths of this team. Jaden Daniels is really, really good. He showed that last year. He was phenomenal. And until he shows me otherwise, okay, yeah, quarterback is a bona fide strength of this team. He needs no much introduction. We'll talk a little bit more about him here and when we talk about storylines. But then tight end is also a strength. Zach Ertz is not as productive as he used to be, but that's okay because he is still as reliable as they come. He was Jaden Daniels' go-to target in short yardage situations. I expect that to remain the same, and their depth is also really good as well, so there's nothing to complain about. And then linebacker is another strength. Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner are one of the best duos in the league. They were so fun to watch. Their chemistry and how they played together was really fun to watch in Washington. Was one of the most fun parts of their entire team. So that's exciting that they brought Bobby Wagner back. And so to me, that's a strength of this team. Is it a little top heavy? Yeah, but at the same time, Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner were fantastic together. So it's really hard to call that a weakness when they were so good in 2025. But then you look at their weaknesses. As my script falls over, I apologize. I do that a lot. I think I just need to get a new case. But their two weaknesses are on defense. Defensive line. I've already made this clear that their defensive line is pretty average for the most part. Dorrance Armstrong and Javon Kinlaw are average starters. Daron Payne is a really good player. He's going to take a step forward, I think, for him being the number one defensive tackle. But then Johnny Newton, Jerzon Newton, he needs to take a step forward this year. He's a big wild card in this whole thing because he didn't play all that much compared to Payne and Allen last year. So he's going to be in a new role, stepping into it. I want to see him do better and step up, but that is a unknown to this point. We'll have to see. There's some encouraging things, but I can't say with certainty that Johnny Newton is going to be good for the Commanders in 2025. And then the other one is corner. On paper, the starting trio of Trey Amos, Marshawn Lattimore, and Mikey Sainristil is good. I like it. But Mikey Sainristil, I have no concerns about him. He's going to be in the slot. He's going to be in his proper position. I think he takes a step forward this year. Trey Amos, he's a rookie. He is going to struggle. Rookie corners tend to struggle. That is not a new thing. That's not an uncommon thing. That's pretty factual that there is a higher chance that he's going to struggle as a rookie than be good. I have a very high I think that his press and his aggressive nature is going to get the better of him, especially earlier in the year. And then Marshawn Lattimore, to me, is a complete wild card. I have no idea what to expect from Marshawn Lattimore in 2025. He's going to be healthy, but last year, he did next to nothing, and he was a liability in coverage, especially in the playoff game against Tampa Bay. So if he can come back and be healthy, if he's healthy, truly healthy, and can get back to what he was when he was with the Saints, where he was the true number one elite lockdown corner we've known him to be, then that's great. But so far, he has shown nothing that, and watching it so far, that gets me excited about that. So if he's not good, this secondary is probably going to struggle a lot in 2025. So a lot's riding on him. He's a big wild card. But right now, because I can't say with confidence that he's going to be good, I think right now the cornerback group is going to be a weakness, but could very easily turn into a strength if things work in their favor. So divisional-wise, I have the Commanders, of course, finishing second place. They're not as good as Philly. I mean, there's not very many teams that can say are as good as Philly. I think Philly's still the best roster in the NFL all around, considering that they still lost plenty of pieces anyways. But they're still going to be in the playoffs. They're still going to be good. And I already spoiled it, but I'll throw it on screen right now. The official record prediction is 10-7 for the Commanders. But like I said, they could also go 11-6. They could go 12-5 again. Anything is between 13 and 9 wins is within the realm of possibility for the Commanders. But if they want to win 10-plus games again and make the playoffs again like I have them, how is that going to work? Well, that leads us to our first storyline, which is Jaden Daniels in year 2. And the biggest question for him is, will there be a sophomore slump? We saw this with CJ Stroud in 2024. 2023 looked amazing, looked like he was the true future of the Houston Texans franchise, and he still looks like that. But people thought that they would take a big step forward in 2024, and they didn't. They were worse last year, despite having the same record. And a lot of that had to do with CJ Stroud not being as good. So Jaden Daniels, when with the rest of this team becoming the hunted instead of the hunter, can they make that transition? Can Jaden Daniels make that transition? Honestly, I'm not sure. Because as much as I want to say, yes, Jaden Daniels is going to have a strong second season, I would believe that. I'm going to root for that. But you have to acknowledge that this is a very real possibility. And with the Commanders overall as a team taking a step backwards, it would not surprise me if it happened. It would suck, but it would not surprise me considering we just saw it with CJ Stroud. So that's the biggest thing going into year 2 for Jaden Daniels is, will he have that sophomore slump? If I had to pick one, if I had to go to one side or the other, I would say no, he would not. I think the wide receiver group on the top is better. I think that the offensive line is improved, bringing in Laremy Tunsil. That have a better chance of Jaden Daniels, to me, not having a sophomore slump compared to him actually having one. So that's where I stand on it, but I acknowledge both sides of the coin here. It's both are very much possible. And the second storyline is the offensive line, because now that they have improved pieces, but it wasn't just Laremy Tunsil. Brandon Coleman, the rookie tackle from last year, is kicking in to left guard. I think he's going to be better suited there because he has short arms. That should be an improvement. I don't know how good he's going to be out the gate, but Brandon Coleman at guard is interesting to me. And of course, at center, they still have, where is he? What is his name? They still have Tyler Badass. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. What is this? Biadaz? 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 I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry, but he's still at center. And then Andrew Wiley at right tackle. Josh Carnley is probably going to be the backup, but Josh Carnley could be starting games at some point, so I would not, hold that, say, let's shut down, oh yeah, he's not playing games. He could start games at some point for the Commanders if Andrew Wiley gets hurt, but if Andrew Wiley's healthy, he should probably play because you want some continuity at the right tackle spot, because right guard Sam Cosmi is coming back from injury and competing with Nick Allegretti. I think Sam Cosmi ends up winning the job, but considering he's coming off of injury, that's going to be a little bit of a question mark. And that's why I think starting Andrew Wiley is more important, because if you start a rookie right tackle and a guard like Sam Cosmi who's coming off of an injury where he's an own wild card in his own right, if things don't work out, things could return really bad really quickly for this offensive line on the right side if things don't work out. And Jaden Daniels in this offense cannot have that. So bringing Sam Cosmi back is important. He needs to play well. Nick Allegretti played fine in relief. So even if Sam Cosmi isn't ready, I think Nick Allegretti will be okay. So this offensive line, really important. They got better. They've improved. So now I want to see the actual improvement on the field. I want to see it look better, and it better be. And then I mentioned this already, but can Johnny Newton step up? Can Dorrance Armstrong step up? Dorrance Armstrong, I went to say that he was an average starter. He was a early draft pick for them either last year or the year, or no, not last year, but the year before last. So I take that back. I was a little incorrect when I was talking about the defensive line being a weakness on that part, but it is still a weakness because Dorrance Armstrong is mostly a wild card. He needs to step up and he needs to be good. If he is, then this defensive line will be a lot better. A lot's riding on these two guys in particular to get better. And if he does, then that will bode really well for this defense, especially these corners. And then the fourth one, can their veterans stay healthy? I mentioned this earlier. The Commanders are still very veteran heavy. They still have a lot of veterans starting for them. And if injuries start to pile up, as it does with older players at times, it's not uncommon. It's very common, actually. So if that happens, the depth will be tested on this bunch. How will they perform if that happens? That's going to be a big adversity. Big piece of adversity they're going to have to deal with if that happens, because Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, and then Bobby Wagner, these are all guys that are nearing the ends of their careers. So you don't want them getting hurt, because if they do, their depth in those spots is going to take a little bit of a dip. The tight end is probably the one I'm least worried about, because I already mentioned their good depth, but running back and linebacker are spots where things are a little bit more concerning. So the veterans need to stay healthy if this team wants to hit their ceiling and win over 10 games. And then the fifth one is culture. Culture, this one I say a lot. I say it for every single coach going into year 2, because what they established last year was great. fantastic. Now they need to build off of that. They need to continue to build their culture. The foundation has been set. It's now time to build upon it. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make. And so how they respond in tough situations, how they respond to adversity, and how this team rallies with one another, that's going to be important to look for in the Commanders in 2025. I don't think there's going to be issues with it, so that's not why I'm mentioning it here, but I'm mentioning it because it is important for a new coach, new quarterback, going into year 2. This rebuild, this new regime is still very new for them, so you want to see that continuity and what they've established be built upon. That's the point I'm really trying to get at. But also, one more little tidbit, a lot of players are going to be free agents after the year for the Commanders. 37 in total, but some of the most notable ones, every single starting receiver is set to be a free agent. Terry McLaurin, Noah Brown, Deebo Samuel, Marcus Mariota, their backup quarterback is going to be a free agent. Zach Ertz, free agent. So all their top weapons in the passing game are gone. But also at the same time, Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler are both free agents. Bobby Wagner is a free agent. And a couple other starters as well in that list. So the Commanders this year, you almost want them to, it almost kind of has to be Super Bowl or bust, because after this year, with all the players that they're going to lose, they're going to have to really hit in the draft and retool a little bit. So it's going to be interesting. This year is going to be riding a lot on them having success and potentially making another run at a Super Bowl, because the Commanders are going to have a lot of turnover after 2025. So that's going to be something we're going to have to look at when the time comes to it. But it is something to think about as this year goes along for Washington, because this could be the last year, well, it will be the last year that all these guys, especially all these starting weapons for Jaden Daniels, will be playing together. But with that being said, that is going to do it for me for today's video talking about the Commanders. If you guys have enjoyed and you've made it this far, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe button. It helps the channel out tremendously. We're trying to reach 500 subscribers before the 2025 season ends, the regular season, I should say. And you guys are almost at 200. We're almost there. You guys are doing a fantastic job. So if we can reach 200 by the season starts, we're going to be in a really good spot. Secondly, make sure you guys let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think the Commanders take a step backwards, or do you think they're going to the Super Bowl this year? I want to hear everything you guys have to say about this team. Thirdly, make sure you guys follow me on social media, whether TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. And then also, if you guys are a fan of any team I've made so far in the season preview series, or you know someone who's a fan, go check out the rest of my season preview series videos. The entire NFC North and South is done. The AFC is done. So a lot of great content for you guys to go check out and watch. Get the word out if you know someone who's a fan of one of these teams, and come here to the Shoemake Take to check that out. Well, that being said, that is going to do it for me today. Hope you guys have enjoyed, and as always, I will see you all next time.